Welcome to Taking Inventory. I'm Daniel Druger with my co-host James Barrow, and today we welcome Connor McKenna, who's a partner at Luma Partners. Luma is the leading investment bank focused on digital media and marketing, and they've led some of the most notable M&A transactions in the space. Just a few of them include Yahoo agreeing to a native advertising partnership with Taboola, the creation of Magnite, which was between Rubicon Project, Teleria, and SpotX, and Blackstone's majority investment in Liftoff. They're also famous for their Lumascapes. I think everyone listening to this has probably seen a Lumascape, and they help everyone from executives to students really understand the complex digital media and marketing ecosystems. At Luma, Connor works across a range of focus areas that include ad tech, connected TV, and emerging trends in commerce media and digital audio. So we're really lucky to welcome Connor today. Connor, excited to have you on the podcast.
Likewise, James, Daniel, thanks for having me here.
So maybe the best place to start is we'd love to hear about your background and journey at Luma since you've been there for quite some time.
Sure. I've been there about 9.5 years now. And funny enough, it came from a completely out of the blue cold LinkedIn outreach is how I landed at Luma. So a friend of mine, now friend of mine, reached out. I was on vacation in Miami, I think, on my birthday, and I got this outreach, and I said, absolutely not interested. I just got promoted, but I've heard your name. We should go grab a drink. Drinks turned into drinks and 6 hours of dinner. And he told me that he was actually leaving Luma because got an offer to be the CFO at Imager, if you remember Imager, right after they raised 40 from Andreessen. And I was like, holy shit, this is very interesting. This is totally different than what I was doing, which was investment banking for insurance companies, and the rest is history. I had been bounced around investment banking roles after college, and then this opportunity came out of the blue, and now I've been 9.5 years in ad tech, and finally start to feel like I've been through enough cycles of ad tech that I'm really fully ingrained in it.
Is ad tech like going from insurance to ad tech at first? Were you shocked by how messy ad tech was, like in comparison to something highly regulated like insurance? Or are there more similarities than differences? Or are they just like totally different worlds when it comes to like a deal making perspective?
On the insurance side, I was like a number cruncher, right? So I'm like building models and doing all that stuff. The availability of data was so different, but I think anything going from insurance to any high growth technology would have been pretty stark. I think the crazy aspect was I went from a big firm that was very structured in that way to a smaller firm that was incredibly nimble, and you've got a CEO who's making random parody videos all the time. So it's just all in all a complete 180 shift, and the ability to say you go out, build relationships, create content, what's your opinion, all that type of stuff was pretty drastic, which was a big reason why I came over. I think I realized I could be good at banking, but I could care less about insurance. And I increasingly saw that the value is finding an opportunity or an area you're excited to learn about and becoming a subject matter expert there. And then you can apply it in multiple different ways. I happen to apply it via banking. And I think at that time, I didn't know if I would apply it via banking, but over time, I've seen that that's my startup. And in many ways, Luma is my startup. And that's how I best serve to apply it today.
And how big is Luma? Like from our perspective, being in ad tech for the last, whatever, I don't even too long, 15 years, to me, like Luma's gigantic, and the conferences are just like baller and everyone's there. Like in a weird way, I'd be like, oh, it's the size of a little, like 300 people. I don't even know. Like how big is it? And also, can you explain to people just like why it's so different? Because from the outside, there is something like very unique about it, but it's almost hard to put your finger on, you know?
Yeah, sure. So we've always operated very lean. So we're less than 20 people total and always have been. So the major difference in Luma than other banks is twofold. One is our focus, and our second is our go-to-market. In general, investment banks, especially middle market investment banks, tend to be very wide in their approach because their expertise is selling companies, right? And helping companies work through that process of going through an M&A deal. And so they want to be able to take on any potential client and go sell them, and especially if you're selling to private equity, there's pretty rote processes that are in place to do that. Our approach is very different. We go very deep. So instead of like inch deep, mile wide, we're very narrow and go incredibly deep there. Because what we saw was ad tech, or take advertising and marketing more broadly, $1 trillion global TAM in the digital and tech side has been growing 20% a year for 20 years. There's pretty much no other industry that's done that. It's fragmented not by hundreds of companies, but thousands of companies, and it's incredibly complex and dynamic. If you're going to focus on the sector, you really need to focus, or it's hard to stay on top of it. Because of those dynamics, this sector is also much more built for strategic M&A, where the critical aspect is not just perfecting what valuation are you buying a company at, but what company are you actually buying. I think we've seen lots of iterations in ad tech where you've had strategics follow other strategics or other investors and buy into a category, but they bought the wrong company, and it becomes binary. It goes to zero. And what we found was this sector required, or had a huge opportunity for a advisor that was very deep in the sector. And then our approach to market is much more one of strategic matchmaking than selling a company. Like every banker or just a real estate agent would say, it's better they bought than sold. It's better to have people come to you. You have a lot more leverage that way. And then they'll turn around and say, here's a company that's for sale, right? Or here's a house that's for sale. And we don't do that. Really what we try to do is structure relationships and help companies talk through where there are big strategic unlocks of combining certain capabilities. And then because we're so deep in the space and we publish a lot, so we can be pretty objective as to like where we actually think things are going, we're able to do that without being a complete shill, and then get involved in negotiating the actual trade and maximizing value for our client, which is majority of times the sell side of the company. And that's because large strategics have corp dev teams to run these things. It's that focus on this sector of that intersection of media, marketing, and technology. And it's, I would say, frankly, in that being opinionated there, having opinions as to where we think things are going, and then lining up deals, not in a, this is for sale, but here's this huge strategic opportunity you could go take in this sector, and being a little bit more matchmaker than process executors is really what differentiates us.
And for ourselves as founders and then other startup founders, something that we always are challenged with is focus, right? Focus in the company, because there's 1,000 different directions we can go. And for you guys, you've stayed the course. As you just said, you guys are experts and have gone so deep in ad tech and martech and marketing and digital media. How have you guys stayed so focused? Because I would imagine it'd be easy to say, okay, we're great in this area. We can expand maybe a little further into tech that isn't necessarily advertising or marketing and start to creep out. So how have you guys stayed so focused, and what has that led to? Well,
and on top of that, have you guys ever strayed? Did you guys randomly do a health tech deal, and then you're like, no, I'm not doing this?
We have not. I would say like I really haven't strayed at all. There have been deals that are a little less core to what we're always doing, but it's very much a digital media lens on it. I think I would totally agree on staying focused is critical for startups too. And we often talk to startups and strategics about this. Like, how do you leverage your comparative advantage to get it above market share in a certain space, right? And we think about that a lot. Like, where are we bringing unique insights to a sector and to strategics in order to open up those situations? So I think we often have gotten requests to run a process for services businesses in this space, or the other ad network that we don't think is super differentiated. And that's where we've been really disciplined is turning down projects where we don't think there's a big strategic value and can actually end up being a big time waste for an investment bank to take on. I staying focused on ad tech and marketing technology, or take it another way, like data-driven marketing. You guys are in this space. It constantly is changing. There's constantly new avenues of where this is heading. In many ways, like broader sense of what's happening around the use of data and personalization seems to often start in marketing technology, broadly speaking, and emanate into other places around how people are leveraging identity or measurement or analytics. And that's really been, I don't think it's been hard to stay that focused. I think we've had a lot of the other banks that I would call are tourists in the ad tech space, because valuations go up at a certain point, they take advantage, and they're large banks that can leverage their reputation as just a general large bank, or when IPOs start coming in, they'll get involved. They've got such big businesses and there's not that many scaled transactions that it's hard to go be another player in this. When something turns away, they're going to have to go focus elsewhere because we're going to scoop up a lot of the more specific trades in the space. For us, because we're tight and nimble, we're able to do that. I will say there are situations where the way we negotiate deals is more important than our sector specific focus. I think we do differentiate in how we leverage inbound interest and a catalyst. There's not a lot of banks who they often will fold those back into a traditional process and go call another 50 parties and go back to what they know around bid deadlines and all that. We do manage inbound catalysts in a pretty unique way. We've had a couple of deals that are like, the buyer universe is a touch outside of who we're talking to on a regular basis, but the leveraging of that approach to negotiations has differentiated us. You're not going to go get those in a healthcare company that's going to come calling you to all of a sudden negotiate it. Like we could, and we would do fine. It's just they just don't happen that often. That's what I'd say on that focus.
And from like the operator, like founder point of view, we have a good amount of like ad tech founders listening to this podcast so far. Have you found that there is somewhat of like a playbook? Have you seen that it is really like the specialized vertical SaaS aren't chasing service revenue, almost like don't get like the shitty fake top line percentage of spend? Is there definitely a box of companies that you've seen that like actually can trade versus the hundreds of seemingly interesting ad tech companies, but in reality, at least like people think of as almost being zombies? Is there like a playbook you think that people should think about when building a business if their goal is to sell it, which a lot of people's goal is?
Yeah, I think there's an exception to every single one of these. So I don't know that we've sold businesses that in one vein maybe wouldn't have looked differentiated, but there's a buyer at the table and therefore there's an opportunity to maximize the value with that party. And it's hard to give broad-based advice from that perspective. I think if there's a buyer there and a company's built a services model that really works well for a certain type of buyers, that's perfectly fine. It's probably going to impact valuation, right? Like services business versus technology business have different valuation mechanics because for every new dollar of revenue in a services business, you tend to have people to service it, right? That's the benefit of technology. So it's hard to get a 10 times revenue multiple or something like that for a services business, even if it's small, right? Whereas small technology business, we've had deals that are, it's a not meaningful measure of revenue because there effectively was no revenue, but it was still done at a very high price because the technology and future revenue unlock. So that tends to be more tech specific. I'd say where often our advice is not dissimilar from what you guys just said before, which is trying to chase everything. There are businesses and technology where you're constantly trying to chase where you think the market's going or what you think people care about versus having conviction and a vision as to where you think things are going and really delivering strong on specific products and capabilities, especially like at the start, right? I maybe there's a slightly different answer to your question, but I get right now questions from companies that have 10 million in revenue or less. Hey, should we buy X? Should we buy Y? Like it's a buyer's market. We should start thinking about M&A. I'm like, no, well, what are you doing? You have limited time already, unless it is absolutely the perfect company or you're buying the engineers and they're going to come in and it's something you guys are specifically working on. Going out to buy some revenue or light product capabilities that are tangential at best is a complete waste of time. And it's a huge time suck to go do these things. Like leave that to the bigger players who maybe could digest it and need a team and use it for hiring. But in general, if you're a smaller business, that's a massive distraction. It's the same thing in general, right? With what products go after. I think it's all about finding a core product or vision of what really works. And if you see a go-to-market motion that works really well, stepping on the gas behind that to really start to penetrate the market. And then as you expand, you might find other ways to service your clients and bring in more products. But at earlier stage companies and even into the first 50 to 100 million in revenue, I think those tend to be the ones that really are doing outsized work.
And that's super interesting that the early stage companies are even coming to you to have that discussion. And clearly it's happening enough that you've now formed a response and a pretty strong opinion as a firm. From that, maybe you can give us some detail on what your investment process looks like and how you evaluate the opportunities and as a firm decide we're going to pursue this or not pursue this.
Yeah, sure. So we don't make investments, right? We're doing advisory work on that. We are, I guess another way we differentiate a touch than other firms is we often will officially engage late. We get to know everyone in the market, given the Lumascapes and everything else we do. We're sort of ecosystem developers first and foremost, and then monetize that doing M&A advisory at the end of a company's life cycle. There's a few fold, right? I think in general, we'll stay closer to companies where we just see the big opportunity, right? And so you're seeing a product that is differentiated, maybe is whether it's created in a category or really stands out in a category, which to me often means that the go-to-market motion and revenue and business metrics are really driving through that, because I'm not a technologist. It's hard for me to perfectly evaluate that other than what I'm hearing from others or seeing in their numbers. But the most important thing for us in any situation is how actionable is this inbound, right? Whether we initiated it or that someone's getting some inbound from companies, there is constant conversations, I'd say in air quotes, pretty much around potential M&A coming for a business. And the vast majority of that is not real. The number of times I get a company who's saying, oh, this sales guy said they should buy us, and so we think that's real, maybe we should hire a banker. I've never seen one of those deals get done, maybe one or two. But in general, you get a lot of salespeople out talking about how they should buy a company and talking to other salespeople or CEOs about that. Those are not how M&A deals get driven. Instead, it's like, who are you talking to? Is it top down from the CEO or upper management? How often have you guys talked? How explicit has M&A been? Have they put a term sheet on the table? Have you shared data? Because if someone says, I want to buy you for whatever, $100 million or $500 million, but you haven't shared enough data, that means nothing, right? Okay, well, what's the basis for this number you threw out? And is it going to completely fall apart once we get into diligence? And that's built on conversations with the company. It's also built on our knowledge of buyers in the space, right? We know who tire kickers are. We know who's been in lots of discussions and maybe fallen out for other reasons, or who's serious and when that should be, taken seriously. And so it really, that's, I think, the biggest of when we officially engage is what's our perception of, is this going to sell? Is this buyer real? Or are there other buyers we expect we know are looking for this capability, because we're in all those discussions as to what are the core capabilities in different subsectors of this ecosystem. So we generally have a pretty good pulse on where things are going from that perspective.
Is there any way you could tell us and our friends in ad tech who the tire kickers are? No. Just to save everyone time. No. The
fifth on that one.
Yeah. I think almost maybe along those lines is, as you were just going through, I was thinking about our time at Snap, and I think Snap had and has an awesome corp dev team, but it was interesting where you'd have that sort of just like weird friction between corp dev and then product, on which products and what teams you really should buy, and then layering on a banker into it. Have you guys found it's challenging to work with the corp dev teams? And asking from the lens of, they're forced to be they're supposed to be forced to be generalists in some ways. Like you think about Snapchat, like that corp dev team's buying like AR companies and ad tech companies and just like random stuff across the board. And so in some ways, I would think you guys probably would know more about ad tech and marketing tech than some of those teams. Is that hard to navigate, or do they look at you as a way they can get smarter and make better choices as they go through it?
So at big strategics, it's very dependent on who it is, but oftentimes corp dev is not our first relationship. I think it's generally the first relationship of bankers, but not for us because of the more strategic nature of our deals. Some corp dev guys are fully driving strategy and they're involved in that process. But if it's a product-led organization, tends to be business unit leaders or product leads, or the CRO might be a salesperson who can drive an M&A deal, but it tends to be their strategy that they're trying to drive behind, and they're looking to build, partner, buy to go after it. And then they may, if they're looking to buy, right, it's coming in that direction. Where corp dev is often fielding conversations from other bankers who are selling companies, and they're trying to sell up, should we buy this capability? And if it's not on the product leads priority list, those just go out the window. Big company like Google gets 400 calls a week from bankers to corp dev because everyone can come up with a reason why Google should buy their business. And that figure is probably 5 years dated. But I bet they still are, even in a time where it's very hard for Google to buy anything, right? Because of all the antitrust stuff they're going under, certainly in ad tech. So the corp dev for us is often like we're just helping facilitate a deal together, right? We've already negotiated the critical, do you guys need to own this, and maybe getting to the ultimate valuation, often driven through the actual lead at the company who wants to own this and is putting their career on the line, maybe not the career on the line, but certainly like standing up for, we should own this asset, we should buy it, and we should pay that value for it. And then corp dev is the management of diligence and making sure you're getting all your answers filled and negotiating some other core items around escrows and net working capital and things like that. But they're more execution. So that's once the key strategic decision's been made, and then you're executing to make sure you get the deal done, or they're making sure that they're doing all their homework and not buying something that has lots of skeletons or other concerns. But it's not the driver of should or should we not own this asset. That's often coming up. Now, I won't say that. Certainly at Snap, there were some key corp dev guys who were intimately involved in strategy. And they're using us like the product guys, like the other ones that use Luma as a resource, as a sounding board. What's going on? What am I not seeing? We're in our business all day long. You're sitting at 30,000 feet seeing everything. And so because we get engaged late, we're not like coming in and saying, oh, here's exactly what we think. And by the way, we represent those 5 companies. Instead, it's here's what we see of the world. And if we're not just telling it to you, we generally put this out publicly. So we're pretty credible. And this is what we actually think. Here's what we think you as a strategic could be doing in this space. You can build, partner, buy. If you're looking to buy, these are the companies you should be talking to, and you should get to know them. That does not mean that company is for sale, right? In some ways, every venture capital backed business is in some way for sale, right, at the right price. But those are the companies that have the capabilities that fulfill what you're trying to achieve, or what we think you should be trying to achieve. And so I think most, whether it's strategy or corp dev or product leads or business unit leads, see us as a resource in that way, versus coming in and talking to them about here's where ad tech multiples are today and recent deals that have gotten done. And this is what's going to come to market in the next 6 to 12 months. Because that's just, frankly, it's not as interesting for how a strategic is prioritizing where they need to go, how they can create outsized value in their product capabilities and the space that they play in.
And those companies are using you as a resource. So today, since we have you on podcast, we're going to use you as a resource similarly. So I guess from your 30,000 foot view, what is the state of ad tech, MarTech today? Like, what should we all be looking at and be aware of?
That's a very loaded question. How long do we have? So I point people to go watch our State of Digital. We did one recently in May, and the video's on our site and on YouTube or somewhere you could probably find it. That goes into more detail on this. I think, broadly speaking, one of our themes from that was this notion of like ad tech is eating the world. And if you take a step back, and this is broader than just ad tech, but it was a nice, small, short framing of this concept. But in no time in my 9.5 years in this space has there been more and varied companies and categories that are focused on advertising specifically, and also how are they using their consumer data and personalizing their consumer experience than I think we are today. Whether it's everything's an ad network where you've got retailers and all those players, but even take a Netflix that 3 years ago was, we will never do advertising, and now advertising is a core part of their business. That alone, it just creates a massive amount of opportunity for this ecosystem. You combine that with the fact that this ecosystem around what's happening with data and identity and those changes means we're going through a paradigm shift. I don't think we're ever going back to not using data and not using machine learning to optimize advertising and marketing. It's just going to change, which creates a bunch of challenges for incumbents that are in certain positions. It also creates a ton of opportunity in this ecosystem. So whether that is shifting from use of third-party data more to first-party data and data collaboration platforms, whether that's a shift in power dynamics from what was more of a demand-side driven power dynamic in the open internet, because you can find inventory anywhere, to a supply-side one in CTV or commerce media. That's supply side, I'd say, both in data, who has access to lots of data and who has access to inventory, shifts from more deterministic data to probabilistic data, and just the onset of like how people are using performance and machine learning in different ways. With you've got what we called like black box performance with Meta and Google stuff with PMax and Advantage Plus and others. We're just entering a very interesting phase in this ecosystem. To me, that creates opportunity, right? Any change is where there becomes a ton of innovation and opportunity, and inevitably M&A follows that too, because people will get ahead of certain curves, and larger platforms will look to be moving into that space and be willing to acquire, and often acquiring at more attractive valuations, right? Because they've deemed something a strategic imperative, and you have that capability that's very hard to build. That's the perfect situation for a company, and frankly for an M&A banker who's thinking about that space.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like Daniel and I talk about this a lot. I think actually we totally agree. It's like the irony of the supply side is now winning, which does represent like walled gardens winning, which they've always been winning. But then if you look at like the public markets, you have Trade Desk, which is inherently on the demand side, has the highest valuations. Like that current valuation is like higher than combining Snap and Pinterest. It feels like, do you think it's fair to say that like the next 5 years, like the supply side's it's very likely they really show their hands and they're like, okay, like we are going to build these wall gardens. Like there's going to be like 30 different wall gardens that can command real spend, and they'll all have to build their own stack. And it's like a balkanization. Is that like a reasonable thesis of that? And if that's the case, do you have a point of view of what happens to like the open internet and maybe players like Trade Desk? This is maybe take off your Luma hat, even if you can. I'm just curious what you think, given those dynamics.
I think this fully sits in my Luma hat camp in general, but like these are things I'm constantly thinking about. Yeah. But so I think, I don't know if you've heard our concept about hedge gardens, but I think that's much more the space where it will be, which is most of these other platforms, I actually do not think are scaled enough to be a full walled garden. And to me, a walled garden is two things. One, you own all the software that companies are coming to buy on for the most part. There might be planning or some other capabilities above that, which people do on Google and Facebook, but pretty much you're going to there to buy. And you control the data, and you have enough power that you are controlling how little data is going out, right? I think there's 3 real walled gardens today, which is Google and Amazon, and they all have billion plus users and multi-billion-dollar ad spends, and they've got such strong consumer value props that people are going there no matter what. And they've really invested so much in the machine learning that their performance continually gets better, absent Apple ATT for some time for some of them, that they're able to attract marketers that way. I don't think you get 30 walled gardens where a global or business are going to log into different interfaces and drive that. I think at that point, there's actually value in being a demand aggregator to manage across that, right? When it's just Google and Facebook, it's actually not that hard to go and run those, and they're pretty specific to those campaigns. Does that mean there's not more power to certain supply players? No, because if they have unique data and they have unique audiences, they can still sell that. I don't think they're necessarily big enough to stay on top of where the technology is constantly going to be moving to own it all themselves, which is where I think there's a little bit more hedge garden, right? They may have to leverage some other technology players to create the capabilities, drive the performance, let a little bit more data out, right? So that people can buy across them, because outside that, it's very hard to have enough mass of consumers and scale that people are coming to your platform. I think Walmart is trying to do this, and Walmart's probably the closest to do it, partially because they're shifting their business model. If you take Walmart and Target, 5 years ago, they both are merchandisers, right? They are deciding what's in their store. They can make like, this is the toy that's going to sell at Christmas time, right? And that toy, if they get selected by Walmart, all of a sudden they're going to have a massive year. Unlike Amazon that says anyone who has a toy, come and sell it and we'll be the pipes and you can do that. Walmart's been shifting their business to that. They have opened the third-party marketplace. They're saying that they're going to make more profit from their tech and services than they will from just selling goods in the store and the margin they make on that. So they are trying to make a shift that then opens them up to be a technology provider, and therefore maybe they should own their full stack. Target, I don't think should and isn't, right? They are still the place where you go because it's an unbelievable shopping experience. Like went with my 4-year-old. Now he keeps asking me to go back to Target. I don't know what it is, but they've figured it out, right? So they're going to continue to really control that consumer experience. They still can make money on media, and then they've got a huge business around Dell. But should they transform their whole business to be a media business, which means all the investments you make into that? I don't know. I think we've seen it play out multiple times in the open web and digital, where even recently Vox shut down and moved off their proprietary CMS system because it turns out the technology keeps moving and it's easier to be on top of that if you're servicing everyone versus servicing a smaller subset. And so I think that side of like, we're moving from a world of third-party data to first-party data. So first-party data platforms, you're going to have a value prop with your consumers to get data back and forth. And therefore, that creates a media opportunity or a data opportunity, and people start to take advantage of it. Everyone tries to put walls up and build their own tech. It's just not going to work that well. So I think in that way, those platforms start to get more, they're able to light up business, but they shouldn't own all the tech. The notion of like supply versus demand power dynamics too is a little more like CNN online compared to whatever other website, right? They had no power because everything was just a cookie-based impression. But as all of a sudden it's who can attract people to their site and collect data from them, the better publishers, and it doesn't have to be a CNN, right? It could be a big independent publisher who's got a direct relationship with their customers, and people will give them more data, all of a sudden gets a lot more power. But it takes a lot away from the made-for-advertising websites. And the made-for-advertising websites were great for aspects of demand, right? Or at least demand intermediaries. But I think that's where the sort of power shifts in that regard.
Awesome. So I think everything we talked about has been super interesting. I think we've got a few more questions, but we're going to do it in a rapid fire format. So we're just going to fire off some questions, get your initial take. That sound good?
Sure.
Okay, great. You've seen a lot of companies, a lot of founders. What are some of the top traits of the best founders you've seen?
I think one aspect, I think there's all the typical ones on focused and decisive and strong leaders. I think another critical part of a founder and really any leader is being a really good storyteller. And I think in this space, or in tech maybe generally, explaining where your company sits, why it's so important, is critical for motivating and hiring your team, getting your go-to-market process in motion, setting up partnerships, and then frankly, also for M&A, right? If you're able to really drive a narrative and have a cohesive narrative as to why you need to exist and why it's so important, it just makes a huge difference in general. And so I think those who do that very well versus those who don't definitely stand out. And sometimes that can have outsized impact on M&A because frankly, M&A always feels a little distant. Oh, companies are buying these other big companies, but all of it comes down to people buy companies, right? And people buy people and narratives. And so if you've got a big narrative that gets to more senior people at a buyer sooner and they've heard of the company, I mean, that is huge. It's so hard to get your company sold or bought if someone goes to their superior and says, hey, we want to go buy so-and-so. And they say, who? So really good storytelling and narrative. I think it also goes hand in hand with, they tend to be really good content marketers and evangelists of their product and capability. All of that obviously assumes you've got strong tech and a business that makes sense, but certainly those who've got all that together, it works great.
Podcast alone, not enough. Check.
Actually, it's a pretty good part of telling your story and talking to interesting people. So there you go.
So speaking of storytellers, Terry is one of the best storytellers out there. And so he puts out a ton of parody videos. What's your favorite Terry video?
Let's see. Before I joined, he had one that was called "Use Bitcoin." That was to that graduation speech, "Use sunscreen." Do you guys remember that? And I remember being what the hell is this guy doing? But it was very funny, and it's funny because Terry is such a very anti-Web3. But this was in like 2013 or something that he did that. He also did one about 5 years ago where he played this year called "Ad Tech is Doomed." That was a reverse poem where he goes through all the reasons that ad tech is doomed, and then it's like, you have to reverse the thinking, and it reverses the exact same words in the other order about how awesome ad tech is. It's just a very creative one versus like ad tech Barbie. So I'll say those two stick out right now.
We'll add both of those to the show notes so that the listeners can check them out. Best idea you'd want someone to start. Can be an ad tech, can be totally off the wall.
I'm so in ad tech. I don't know that I've gotten off the wall.
What would be? What business could you sell tomorrow if it existed?
I think in the like data collaboration side of things and how to get first party data to work together isn't so clunky right now and time consuming and really used in pretty bespoke ways. It feels if there's companies that can twofold, maybe simplify that so that the go to market is much easier and it's more of a checking the box decisioning. I don't know how that would be the case, but whoever figures that out, that would be very interesting. Or a company that can show how to use a really tight core of data and probabilistic expand the performance like in a very efficient way. Those are things I'm thinking about as the world shifts from deterministic to probabilistic. It's not a good articulation of what the product capability set would be, but I think those companies that really can figure out how to play in that world are going to be very interesting. But I think that lack of articulation is why I'm a banker and not a founder. Yeah.
We actually have a product coming out on the second side that we can articulate in like a month. We should show you. Yeah, it'll be very cool. So that's good that we think that's a good space. Right.
Yeah, and we'll work on our storytelling on that. Make sure that's yeah. Okay. If you weren't at Luma or you weren't in investment banking, what would you be doing?
I think this is a hard thing to say if pragmatically of where I am after being in. I don't really see myself being outside of ad tech in some form or fashion. Maybe that's because I see ad tech as coming to everything, but I certainly could see eventually potentially working for a company or investing in the space, depending on what it was. If I never came to Luma and never knew what ad tech was, I'd probably just be a boring banker somewhere. Just stayed in the flywheel.
Eric last week had the same response that he couldn't envision himself doing anything other than ad tech. James and I talk about it. I think for better or worse, we're all stuck in ad tech. We love it. This is what we know.
Look at all the big founders who've had good exits coming back to ad tech, like Brian O'Kelly and Kamakshi and Omar and others. Crux, like all of them have started new ad tech like businesses in the last 2 years. So
yeah. Just a few more we'll fly through. Biggest threat or biggest single threat you think there is to Meta, Google, Amazon dominance in the space?
Regulation.
Like that. Simple and complex. And then last, you're a golfer, right? PGA and Live, this combination. Are you excited about this?
Not really. The storyline's great. It certainly makes for interesting stuff to read. I would have liked to see the PGA Tour be able to extract a little more pain from Live before I think inevitably they were going to come back together. I always thought, I would tell my wife this, who could care less, but I had to talk to someone about it, that Live was like a recipe for depression for those guys because no one cared about the events. They made all this money, but there was all of a sudden it took the purpose out of the golf game. Seemingly, I didn't watch a lot of Live events, but in 5 years' time, if they couldn't play in the majors and they weren't really doing that, and still they were just in the CW occasionally, but they had all made $200 million. I think that it's like one of those things where they just would have gotten super bored and depressed over whatever that was. Because it's in general, if you're not striving for the next thing, you're not. People in the human nature is that it doesn't matter about money, right? It just matters about continuing to achieve and push forward. So that was, I think it's good for their mental health that they're all coming back together. Some of the golfers that went to Live, I really enjoy. So good to see them, although they were in the mix in majors anyways. Yeah. Staying out of geopolitical commentary aside.
They may be buyers of ad tech at some point. So
we don't know.
Yeah, let's go please.
And then for everyone listening, where can people find you or can read some of the things you're putting out?
Yeah, I'm probably most active on LinkedIn and Twitter a little bit. So I post a fair amount on there about just things we're seeing. Certainly follow lumapartners.com or sign up for our newsletters. We put out a quarterly market report if you really want to dig into data. And then also we're always publishing our views on state of digital and things of that. And you can catch a couple of Terry's parody videos in there as well. That's definitely the best place to find me.
We'll add a bunch of that to the show notes so that listeners can check things out, check out the videos, some of the reports. Connor, thank you so much for joining us today. Really enjoyed this conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. Excited to hear the story you're going to be telling in a month's time.
All right. You'll be the first one I tag on my many LinkedIn posts that I do constantly. But thank you. Thank you for doing this, man. We appreciate it.
Likewise. This is fun.